This next story, it's not so much mathematically complicated, but it can be confusing if I don't explain it correctly. So I'm really going to try to do a good job here. As many of you know, every member of the House of Representatives represents roughly the same number of people. There are 435 districts in the United States, 435 representatives for those districts. Based on the last census in 2010, each district is drawn to have roughly 710,000 people in it. Now, that will change based on the 2020 census, but that's how the districts are drawn right now. In the Senate, it's very different. Each state gets two senators. So California gets two senators and Montana gets two senators. But California has 40 million people and Montana has 1 million people living in the state. So in California, you have 20 million people per senator, whereas in Montana, you have 500,000 people per senator. Donald Trump has been impeached by the House. Each House member voting in favor or against represents their 710,000 constituents. The next step is a trial in the United States Senate where senators vote. In order to convict Donald Trump on impeachment, you need a 2/3 vote. Now, depending on which state's senators vote to convict versus which state senators vote to acquit, you could conceivably have the senators that represent merely 7% of the American population decide that Donald Trump is acquitted, even if the senators representing 93% of the country's population vote to convict. There's a really good piece in the Washington Post about this by Philip Bump. In the House, you had 53% of House members vote to impeach, and they represent about 53% of the American population. If you need 67 senators to vote to convict, you need only 34 to vote to acquit. If 34 vote to acquit, there would not be enough to convict Donald Trump. 34 senators means 17 states worth of senators. If the senators come from the smallest population states, those 34 senators who can decide Donald Trump is acquitted conceivably represent a population of 24 million people, just 7% of the country's population. A lot of senators represent a whole bunch of land, but not that many people. Now, is that fair? I don't know the answer. I mean, if you go back to the history of the United States and why we have the infrastructure that we do, there are specific reasons why it's deliberate that every state has the same amount of Senate representation. In this case, if 50% of the country wants Trump removed, as they do, and the senators representing just 7% of the population say, nah, we want him to stay, they win. Is that disenfranchising? In a sense, it is. Now, by the way, when I said a lot of senators represent more land than they do people, a lot of senators in practice represent mostly corporations, but that's sort of another problem altogether and not today's discussion. Now, a lot of these provisions, like, every state has two senators regardless of population, much like the Electoral College, they were put in place to prevent the so-called tyranny of the majority, which is a worthy goal. The problem is that in practice, it has often backfired into the tyranny of the minority. Look at the Electoral College. The tyranny of candidates focusing on arbitrarily small states and giving small states disproportionately more power in deciding who becomes president of the United States. Okay, it's no longer tyranny of the majority, but the focus is now arbitrarily something else. When it comes to the Senate, it gives states with very few people relatively outsized power to make really important decisions that affect large swaths of the population. Impeachment would, of course, be something that affects every American. Who is president is a pretty big issue. So arguably, there's a problem either way, although it's a different problem in each case. But the mathematical reality is if the senators representing 7% of the population in those 34 states decide we want Trump to stay, it doesn't matter what the senators representing the other 93% want. Those senators representing the 7% get to decide. You tell me whether that's fair. We are wrapping up 2019. On January 1st, we will have a major membership special to kick off 2020 with a bang, an election year, often the biggest years of growth for the show. If you are even mildly interested in supporting the work that we do, and you want to do it at an obscene, disgusting discount, go to davidpakman.com, sign up for our newsletter, and then on January 1st, you will get an email with the super secret coupon code allowing you to sign up at a huge, huge discount. Sign up for the newsletter on our website. Let me know what you think about this tyranny of the majority versus tyranny of the minority issue by sending me a tweet at @dpakman. I am thrilled to tell you that today's episode is sponsored in part by Blinkist.com/Pakman. Blinkist is a really unique service for your phone, tablet, and web browser, and it is incredibly useful for people like me who love books and learning but are busy. Blinkist takes the best and most popular nonfiction books and condenses them into 15-minute audiobooks. I'm sure that if you're like me, you have a very long list of books that you've been meaning to read. You only have so many hours in the day, and that's why Blinkist is so amazing. They take the most important information, the themes, the insights from each book, and they distill it into a 15-minute audiobook that you can listen to in one sitting. I've listened to a ton of books on Blinkist. Our audience can get a 7-day free trial by going to Blinkist.com/Pakman. If you're watching on YouTube, I put a link in the description. I have listened to Blinkist books about economics, about political science, about history, about science, so many interesting things. And after the free trial, if you like it, you can continue enjoying thousands of condensed audiobooks for about $5 a month. Go to Blinkist.com/Pakman. That's BLINKIST.com/PAKMAN.